Okay.
Continue. Hi, everybody. This program is brought to you by grassroots volunteers Ellen Mowbray, Mike Thomas, and myself, Merrill Blackman. We're with Indivisible Florida 13, and Amy Keith with League of Women Voters, St. Petersburg area. Local elections are so important. The representatives we elect affect our lives in so many ways: air and water quality, sewage, schools, the inclusivity of our city, and the right to vote without voter suppression. These are just a few of the things that are affected. Please don't let anything stand in the way of you casting your vote for this important St. Petersburg mayoral primary. If you can't vote on August 24th on election day, please cast your mail-in ballot with ample time for it to be counted. Our presenter today is Amy Keith. Amy knows more about all things voting and is more enthusiastic about the voting process and the democratic process than anyone I know. She is with Voter Services, and she's also a county lead on election protection. And we're so grateful to her for sharing with us and being a presenter from time to time. Thank you also for tuning into this program and being committed voters. If you want to ask a question, you'll be able to electronically raise your hand. Just go to the bottom right of your screen where it says reactions, and it should show you a raised hand. Amy will take questions at different times in the presentation. And Amy, Keith, we're very grateful to you once again. Thank you very much. Let's get started.
Great, thank you so much, Meryl, and thank you all so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be educating folks and talking about elections, especially local elections, which often get a lot less attention, but really matter incredibly in our own lives. So what we're going to talk about today is the St. Petersburg 2021 primary election, which is already going on right now. We're going to talk about how the primary election works for mayor and city council, and we're also going to talk about what voting looks like in 2021, because there have been some changes as a result of Senate Bill 90, which was a new elections law passed this year. So first off, let's talk about the St. Pete primary election, which will be held on August 24th, 2021. Their offices that are on the ballot in the primary are the mayor of St. Petersburg, as well as council members districts 1, 4, and 8. And we'll cover in a couple slides why it's only those 3 districts. First up, let's talk about the mayor primary. So the mayor of St. Petersburg serves a 4-year term and is limited to 2 terms in office. So our current mayor, Mick Kreisman, has served his maximum 2 terms, and he will not be on the ballot this year. This means that here in St. Pete, we get to pick a new mayor this year. We have, I believe, 8 candidates on the ballot and 1 write-in. And in the primary, everyone in the city gets to vote for them, for the candidates, and the top 2 candidates, so the 2 mayoral candidates who receive the most votes in the August primary, they will be on the November municipal general election ballot. But, and I can't stress this enough, this is so important to know, if a candidate receives more than 50% of the votes in the primary, then that candidate is elected mayor on August 24th. I'm going to say that again because you heard me right. If any candidate running in the primary receives 50% of the vote plus 1, so anything over 50%, that candidate is elected mayor on August 24th. So it's really important that you go out and vote in the August primary, because it might be the only chance you have to have your say in who our next mayor is. The way that the mayor primary works, so we've just talked about how, you're going to vote and the top 2 candidates are going to go forward to November. But who gets to vote in the primary? So St. Petersburg's election for mayor is nonpartisan. In a lot of primary elections in Florida, you have to be registered with a political party in order to vote in the primary. That is not the case for our municipal election here in St. Petersburg. It is nonpartisan, and that means that all eligible voters in the city of St. Petersburg get to vote in the primary for mayor, even if they have no party affiliation, and you will see all of the different candidates on your ballot. This also means that there will not be any political party listed next to the candidates' names on their ballot. So If, you know, I know that, of course, a lot of the candidates do have their own personal party affiliations and may be registered with a party. If that personal political party affiliation is an important factor for you when making your choice, you can often find that information on Wikipedia or other public sources or from the political parties. But you will not see political party listed next to the candidates' names on the ballot or on other election material. But again, nonpartisan election, the important point we want to stress is that everybody gets to vote regardless of what your party affiliation is or if you have no party affiliation. All right, so that's the mayor primary. And I'm going to move right on to the city council primary, and then we'll take some questions after we talk about the primary process in case you have any questions about that. So the city council primary. St. Petersburg has 8 city districts, and we have 1 council member for each district. So city council has 8 members, and they each serve 4-year terms. And then every 2 years, we have an election for half of the council member seats. That means in 2021, districts 2, 4, 6, and 8 are up for election as per the regular schedule. You'll also see this year that we have District 1 up for election, and that's because the council member who is currently in the District 1 seat resigned in order to run for mayor. So we're also replacing that council member in District 1. For those of you in Districts 2 and 6, you will notice that Districts 2 and 6 are up for election this year, and they will be on the November ballot, but they will not be on the August primary ballot. And that's because there's only 2 candidates running in each of these districts, so there's no reason that they need to have a primary for those 2 districts. So here's how the city council primary works. Basically, similar to the mayor, the top 2 candidates in each district will receive who receive the most votes in the primary will be on the ballot in November. However, in August, only eligible voters living in the district can vote for their district's primary candidates. And then in November, all eligible voters in the city get to vote for the city council candidates in all districts on the ballot. So it can be a little bit confusing, but basically we have what's called single district primaries. So the voters who live in a district get to decide who the top 2 candidates are for their district. And then we have an at-large municipal general election where all city voters get to vote on who get to vote between the top 2 candidates in each district. I'm going to give you an example to illustrate this. So say you live in District 4 like I do. In August, on your ballot, you'll see the race for mayor, and you'll also see the race for the District 4 city council seat, and you'll be able to vote amongst all those candidates. And then in November, what you'll see on your ballot is potentially the race for mayor if nobody gets over 50% of the vote. And you'll also see the top 2 candidates from District 1, District 2, District 4, District 6, and District 8, and you'll be able to vote for the candidate you prefer for all of those city council districts. Similarly, say you live in District 3, 5, or 7. It's super important if you live in District 3, 5, or 7 to vote in the August primary for mayor, but you're not going to see any city council members on your ballot. But when you get to November, you also will see those top 2 candidates for districts 1, 2, 4, and 6, and will be able to vote on those candidates for city council. Now, I know that that is kind of a lot and a little bit of a confusing system, perhaps. So I'm going to pause for a minute and just see if anyone has any questions about how the primary election works. All right, I'm going to take that as a no.
Yeah,
Explained.
I did.
Oh, Scott, yes.
Sorry. So the over 50% thing works in the primary for the council people as well?
That is a great question. It does not. So the 50% plus 1 is for mayor, not for council. So the residents of the council district get to pick the top 2 candidates, and then the whole city gets to have a say in November. All right. So I want to go on in the next slide, which is really talking about how you can protect your vote by talking through what the options are for voting in this election. Some of you may have heard about Senate Bill 90, which passed earlier this year and changed some of the rules about voting. it really put up in place some hurdles that'll make it harder for a lot of people to vote. And one of the ways that we can help fight the hurdles of voter suppression is to help voters know how to jump those hurdles. It's certainly not the only way to fight voter suppression, but it's a great way to empower voters to help them know what their options are so that they can jump over the hurdles that may be put in their way. So in the St. Pete primary election, option one you have is voting by mail. So mail ballots are already in the mail. They're already going out to voters. If you requested a mail ballot for the 2020 presidential election, you should still be signed up to vote by mail. If you're not, you can sign up to vote by mail by calling the supervisor of elections office. The number's on the screen right there, or by filling out a paper request form. At the moment, the online mail ballot request form is not working. Of course, this may change by the time you view this presentation. It's not working at the moment. I suspect, although I don't know, I suspect this may be because they have to adjust the system to account for the new ID requirements that they can collect securely for people to sign up by mail. But suffice to say, give a call if you want to request a mail ballot. There is no deadline for requesting a mail ballot, but if you want it mailed to you, you have to request it by 5 p.m. on August 14th. And really, that's not enough time for it to get to you and you to get it back. So if you do want to vote by mail, please give a call as soon as possible to request your mail ballot. When requesting a mail ballot, voters now have to provide some additional information. According to Senate Bill 90, voters now must provide a Florida driver's license number, a Florida ID card number, or the last 4 digits of their social security number in order to request a mail ballot. So just be aware of that you will be asked for that information if you are signing up to vote by mail. Also, because of SB 90, all voters who vote by mail will have to submit new mail ballot requests in January 2023. So existing mail ballot requests are go through the 2022 midterms. You'll have to re-request it in 2023. Really, the best way to see how long your mail ballot request is valid for, to make sure that you're signed up to vote by mail, and of course to see if your mail ballot has already been sent to you, is to go to votepinellas.com, click on the mail ballots box, and then go to the check my ballot status link. You can put in some information and they'll tell you exactly the status of your mail ballot and how long your ballot request is good for. So always go onto that website to check and see what your personal situation is. Voting by mail, a lot of you will know this already. There's some really simple things you can do to make sure that your mail ballot is counted. Firstly, and most importantly, it's really important to sign the back of the mail ballot envelope. We know that SB 90 also made potential ballot challenges easier. So your signature on the back of the envelope may be even more important than ever. One thing that you can do is include your phone number and or your email address on the ballot envelope as well. So that way the supervisor of elections can contact you easily if there's any problem with your signature. They legally have to contact you. If they don't have your phone and email, they'll contact you by mail, and then you might not have enough time to fix it. So by putting your phone number and your email address, you do protect yourself and give yourself that opportunity to have time to fix any signature problem that might arise and to make sure that your ballot is counted. So again, sign the back of your envelope, sign it carefully to make sure that your ballot can be counted. Missing signatures are actually one of the main reasons that mail ballots have issues. So just signing it, you're ahead of the game. So the other thing that you need to do to make sure your mail ballot is counted is you have to get it in on time. It has to be at the supervisor of elections office by 7 p.m. on election day. A postmark is not enough. It has to arrive by 7 p.m. on election day. This is also one of the main reasons that mail ballots get rejected or have issues. The mail ballot envelopes this year, I'm very happy to say, are postage paid. So you don't need a stamp or anything. You can just drop it in the mail. Do give it a good 2 to 3 weeks so that it does get there on time by 7 p.m. on election day. Another thing you can do is you can drop off your mail ballot. You can drop it off at any of the 3 supervisor of elections offices during their opening hours. They are all open, I believe, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. And we have a supervisor of elections office right in downtown St. Pete at 501 First Avenue North. And you can drop your ballot off there. These are the only drop boxes for this election. My understanding, based on statements from the Supervisor of Elections Office, is that there will be more drop boxes in 2022 for the midterm elections. But right now, for the St. Pete primary, there's only 3 places you can drop off your ballot, and that is at those 3 Supervisor of Elections offices. You can do that anytime between now and 7 p.m. on election day when those offices are open. On election day, those offices are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And the last option you've got if you're voting by mail is to have someone else drop off your ballot for you. Now, this is one place where the rules have changed more than anything else. Senate Bill 90 put in place some strict new limits on how you can assist other voters with dropping off their mail ballot. I wanted to put this full list up on the screen so that people can kind of see that you can drop off mail ballots for your spouse, your parent, your child, your grandparent, your grandchild, your sibling, and also your spouse's parent, your spouse's child, your spouse's grandparent, your spouse's grandchild, or your spouse's sibling. In addition to that list of family members, you can also deliver 2 additional ballots. And that is what that limit is. So you can deliver those family ballots, or you can deliver 2 additional ballots outside of that list, that specific list of family members. So that is one of the biggest changes that we've had from SB 90. We know that this may be a bit of a burden, or actually not a bit. This might be a major burden on a lot of our elderly population who live in assisted living facilities. So if you do have a friend, a family member, a neighbor who may need support delivering their ballot, keep in mind this list and keep in mind how you can help them out by delivering their ballot in accordance with this new law. All right. Always, we will remind you that one of the best ways to protect your vote if you're voting by mail is to track your ballot. Again, you can go to votepinellas.com, click on the mail ballot box on the bar across the top, and then click on check my mail ballot status. You're going to see this little tracker. It'll tell you if your mail ballot has been successfully requested, or if your mail ballot request is still valid. That 2 will light up blue once it's been sent. When you send it back, you'll see the 3 received light up blue. And then sometime on or after election day, you will see number 4 get marked as counted. This really helps you track the whole process with your mail ballot. If you think there's a problem, say it says sent, but then you don't receive it for 2 weeks, you can always call the Supervisor of Elections office. You do have a right to get up to 2 replacement ballots. Although if you return more than 1, they're only going to count the first one that arrives. So just be aware of that if it gets lost in the mail, you can call and you can get a replacement. And if this screen will also show you if there's any problem with your signature, with your ballot, so that you can also fix it. So this tracking your ballot tool is really important. Do go on there after you return your ballot and make sure that everything is okay. So that is voting by mail. The changes that affect voters from Senate Bill 90 are primarily related to voting by mail. So I do also want to pause for a minute there and see if anybody has any questions about some of those new rules.
Are drop boxes part of this election?
There are only 3 drop boxes for this election, and those are at the 3 Supervisor of Elections offices.
Okay.
We understand that there will likely be a lot more drop boxes next year for 2022 elections, but this election, just the 3.
Thank you.
So moving on to option 2 is your second option for voting in the St. Pete primary is to vote in person on election day. Election day is August 24th, 2021. Polls are open on election day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And as always, if you are in line by 7 p.m., you must be allowed to vote. So if you get there by 7, you're in line, make sure they let you vote because that's your right. It's very important if you're voting in person on election day to vote in the correct precinct and polling location for your current residence. There's a link there at the bottom of the screen. You can find your correct polling place by going to votepinellas.com. You can actually go to the check your registration status. It's going to give you all of your voter registration information, and it'll also give you your correct precinct and polling location. When you vote in person, you do have to present picture and signature identification. Also, just a reminder, if you received a mail ballot, but you decide that you would prefer to vote in person, you can always bring your mail ballot to your polling place and exchange it and vote in person instead. I wanted to highlight that While SB 90 did make changes in identification required for signing up to vote by mail, it did not change the identification that you need in order to vote in person. So it is still this list of different IDs that you can use to vote in person. You have to show a photo and signature ID. You can have your photo and signature on one card or one ID, or you can use one ID to show your photo and one ID to show your signature. The identification you use does have to be on this list. If it's not, do call the supervisor of elections, follow up and see if they can find another way to help you prove your identity, but make sure that you are going to the polling place prepared with one of these IDs, and the ID that you bring does have to be valid. So that has not changed with SB 90. That's the same as it's always been. I also always like to remind folks that the address on your ID does not have to match your current address. We have electronic poll books here in Pinellas County. That means you can change your address at the polls on election day. The address on your ID does not have to match your current residence address, and you should vote in the polling place for your current residence. Then some really, really important notes for the St. Pete primary election. First and foremost, there is no early voting for the St. Pete primary election. I do want to clarify this. In a municipal election year, it is the municipality that makes this decision. So it is the city of St. Petersburg has chosen, which is, under Florida law, this is something that they can choose, to not have early voting in this election. Just to clarify that wasn't a decision of the supervisor of elections office. We understand based on statements from the supervisor of elections office, there will be early voting locations in 2022 and maybe even an expansion. I believe there will be 2 additional early voting locations in 2022. But for the St. Pete primary election, there is no early voting. So your only options are to vote by mail or to vote in person on election day. And again, if you're voting by mail, you can either mail it or you can bring it to any of the 3 supervisor of elections offices during opening hours. If you find that you are voting by mail and you happen to still have your ballot on election day, these are your 2 options. You can't just drop your mail ballot off at your polling place. You can exchange it at your polling place, and then you're going to have to fill out an in-person ballot all over again. Or you can go drop it off at one of those supervisor of elections offices, like the one at 501 First Ave North, which will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on election day. So that's just really important to note that we won't have early voting for the St. Pete primary election. So last thing, I just want to stop and say, is there any other questions about voting and your options for voting in this election or how things have changed? All right, then I wanted to just make a last note. Many of you may be familiar with the Election Protection Poll Monitoring Program. The League of Women Voters has been the Pinellas County lead for this program since 2018. Those of you who volunteered with election protection in the past know how important the no solicitation zone is. So under Senate Bill 90, that no solicitation zone has actually been expanded. So the 150-foot zone from the entrance of the polling place, which was the area that nobody could go past to talk to or bother voters, that now includes a 150-foot zone around drop boxes. So organizations cannot provide any voting assistance or information within that zone. In addition, under SB 90, property owners who are leasing from the supervisor of elections and polling places can remove people from their property. So this year, we will be observing how in-person voting is going for the St. Pete primary election in order to see how some of these new policies are being implemented. So if you are a trained election protection volunteer, we have trained hundreds of volunteers across St. Petersburg over the past 3 years. If you are a trained election protection volunteer who has experience poll monitoring in at least 2 previous elections, please do email us at voting@lwvspa.org and let us know if you're interested in being part of that observation process to see how things are being implemented in the primary this year. We would love to have some of your assistance from some of our most seasoned election protection volunteers. I just wanted to put that out there, let you know that some of those rules have changed, and to see if you'd like to help us out to see how they're going to be implemented. Lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't remind everybody about PinellasVoterGuide.com. That is the League of Women Voters nonpartisan local voter guide for Pinellas County. we canvassed community partners about what issues they wanted to hear about from the candidates. We culled those down, came up with the 6 top issues that were being requested from our community partners. We asked the candidates, we've got responses back. They're all in PinellasVoterGuide.com. If you go to that address, you're going to get actually most of the information that I just told you. You're going to be able to find all of that. You'll find our frequently asked voting questions page. You'll find all your Pinellas specific and St. Pete specific information. And you'll also be able to click through to vote 411. It will ask you to enter your address, and then you'll see which candidates and ballot information is relevant for your precinct. So you'll be able to see all of the candidates' responses to the questions that we asked them. We are using the National League of Women Voters Vote 411 system to power our voter guide now. It's a wonderful system. If you don't want to go through that process, we also kind of put a couple of PDFs up there of all of the candidate responses as a little bit of an easy thing for folks who would rather read it all together in a printed format. So we've got that for you as well, all on PinellasVoterGuide.com. So we do hope that you will use that resource that we put together. Again, this is locally developed, locally written, based on questions that came from our local community. And there we go. Thank you. If there's any other further questions, of course, I also wanted to put up the Pinellas Supervisor of Elections phone number and the votepinellas.com website. You've got Pinellas Voter Guide there as well. And also Election Protection's Nonpartisan Voter Assistance Hotline. Should you have any trouble casting your ballot, you can always call 866-OUR-VOTE for your own voter protection, nonpartisan voter protection and assistance. Again, thank you so much for having me, and I'd love to take any remaining questions that you might have.
So this Dropbox requirement, is that going to make your team be even necessarily larger? Were you not doing that before, having people by the Dropboxes watching 150 feet?
For election protection?
Right.
We did not do in-person monitoring of drop boxes. We did what we call mobile monitoring, where we did have folks go to check and see if there were lines and see how that was working. But we have not traditionally done in-person poll monitoring at drop boxes, although it's certainly something that we have discussed whether or not we should. But we just haven't seen those kind of lines at drop boxes that would really give us the opportunity to talk to voters.
Do you feel like people are more confused because of Senate Bill 90? Are you getting any feedback from all the talks you give that people are wondering if all those changes haven't been implemented already and if that's going to have an impact on voter turnout?
I do think that voters who have heard about SB 90 and heard it reported about are wondering how it will impact them. Wondering, is the fact that there's no early voting in this election related to SB 90, which it isn't. That's a St. Pete City decision. And just kind of wondering about, when you look at voting in a municipal election, often looks different than voting in a federal general election, like a midterm or a presidential. And I think some voters, it's hard to tell what's different because of SB 90 and what's different because it is a smaller municipal local election. Certainly lots of questions from voters about how to return their mail ballot. I think that people are wondering, how they can return at this time because we're not seeing the drop boxes that we saw last year. And, there is that real massive difference of being able to assist other voters with returning their ballot. We do want to make sure that people know that law, as it is unfortunately a misdemeanor if you break it. But it's, so I think that does create some confusion about how folks can return their mail ballot. Also just making changes to your voter registration, you have to provide additional identification information. And that's something that we, voters also may have some questions about why they have to provide it. So yeah, I think Senate Bill 90 is, I think it does make voting more confusing for voters. Any more questions?
Well, we hope a lot of people get to view the recording of this program and that it will be a little bit less confusing because of it. So thank you, Amy.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Amy.